The presenting sponsor for OnEducation is Schoology. Schoology's passion lies in helping instructors and students have the best education experience possible. Schoology is a collaborative, student-focused, and faculty-centered learning management system. Students love Schoology because it gives them 24/7 access to course materials, real-time feedback from their instructors, and easy-to-use collaborative tools. Teachers love the streamlined workflow, integrated apps such as Google and Microsoft tools, and the ability to view evidence of student learning for making instructional decisions. To learn more about what is possible with Schoology, simply visit Schoology.com.
I mean, seriously, Texas, 1%. What the hell is going on in Texas? Welcome to OnEducation. I'm Mike Washburn.
And I'm Glen Irvin. Friends, we have an awesome pod for you today. We will discuss schools that are helping their teachers pay down student loans, why charter school graduation rates are so low, should we be giving zeros to students, and our guest this week is an amazing educational technologist and author, Lisa Johnson.
I'm playing too much Farm Together.
I know, me too.
So I'm up to 182 hours on Steam. It is the 6th most played game in my Steam history. I mean, to be
What's
fair,
number one? Civilization?
Civilization 5 is number 1, and Civilization 6 is number 2, I think.
Okay.
So to be fair, there's them, and then there's kind of everything else.
Yeah.
Like my Civilization 5 played time is about 1,600 hours.
You know that's lifetimes, right?
Yeah, it's a lot.
Lifetimes of Civilization. Now, is that
True.
a game kind of like, I have 172 hours played. Now, this is a short time that we've been playing this game. I have 172 hours now. Is it kind of like Farm Together where we leave our farms up and then kind of walk away on Civilization? Okay. So
there are some
just so
times
people
where
know
I've
that
left
we're not like actively on it the entire, you leave it on. And then the farm is doing its thing, and
yeah, that's
and
right.
if you're on my farm, or I guess yours too now, a lot of it is we have people that we've hired. We have farm hands, because the farm they're so gigantic. So when we come back to the farm hands have done a lot of work for us, and now it's time for us to organize our stuff and sell things.
I was telling you the other day on Discord when we were playing that Steve Isaacs likes playing your farm way more than he likes playing my farm.
See, if
he'll get a chuckle out of that.
If people saw the comparison between our two farms, they might actually know a little bit about ours and what because yours is like super organized. It's very laid out, strategic, and it's actually really, it's not only organized, but it's like if you went into somebody's house and everything is precisely in the right place, the way that they've decorated everything else might be, that's Mike's farm. And mine is just like a bomb went off and things just kind of just ended up in certain places. I have no corrals around my animals. They're just kind of hanging around,
rocking and rolling.
There's random things in random places.
Yes.
And my only mission, I don't even know at this point. I have 45 million in coins, and I have a level 68 farm. I just told you that I think when I get to level 100, I might be done. But we'll see when that happens, because that's quickly approaching. Level 100 is not that far for both of us.
No. Yeah, so Steve doesn't like my structured militarism of the where I want things. He put pigs in the wrong place the other day, and I almost lost my friggin' mind. I was like, Steve, there's a place for the damn pigs. Put the pigs in the place.
Put the pigs in the pen.
I think he got mad at me. I love you, Steve. I'm sorry. Don't leave me.
Steve, if you come into my farm, you can just do whatever you want.
See?
Put pigs wherever you want. Because that's what I do.
Oh, God.
That's hilarious.
Oh, man. So, what else do we got here?
Well, I was wondering, what are you watching right now on Netflix or Hulu or whatever it might be? Because I have an awesome recommendation. Like, well, first of all, I made a Facebook post and we just finished a show together, my wife and I. And then I was like, okay, we need something new.
Yeah,
we got about 47,000 recommendations. Thank you, everybody. Many of the shows we had already seen, Breaking Bad and so on and so forth. So stuff that is amazing shows. So I have a show that you can watch with your spouse that's awesome. You, Mike, and our audience. So the show is called Killing Eve, and maybe I'm late on this train. I think it's only like 8 episodes, but it is so fun. We're 3 episodes in, and it is amazing. I love the characters, and I love it's like action based, but it's a spy show. But it also has some funny moments in it. And as I was telling Mike, my goodness, it's just so dang good. And I want to just keep watching it. The first season, I think, is only 8 episodes. We're like 2 or 3 already in. But I guess season 2 is coming out April 7th. So pretty soon. So I'm going to probably get to there then. That'll be awesome. And I was telling you that the main lead actress is so amazing. Her name is Sandra Oh, and I guess she's been in other shows. Maybe she's in that show about family, or what is that one? A show that everybody watches that I don't want to watch because I'll start crying. Really emotional kind of show.
Oh, This Is Us?
Yeah, This Is Us. I'm not sure if she's in that show. Maybe she's
not watching that.
Okay, I'm not watching
that. No, but
I don't like to cry.
Wasn't she in? I think she was in Grey's Anatomy. I don't know. I don't know anything about TV.
That's probably what she's in. Grey's Anatomy. There you go.
Maybe.
But anyway, this is only specifically on Hulu, though I think you can purchase the episodes on anything else. But highly recommend it. If you have Hulu, watch the show.
There you go.
Yes.
I watch Star Trek Discovery.
Yes.
Which is a friggin' awesome show.
Yeah, you were telling me you loved it. Discovery. Yes. Yeah. The only problem with it is that in the United States, you have to get CBS All Access in order to even watch it, which is, that's just, to me, I'm just...
annoying.
Yeah, it's super annoying. Otherwise, I would watch it. I mean, I would be right on it.
It's pretty available here, so it's on a couple different networks here. So it's pretty great. Like, listen, I'm a Trekkie, so you can't talk to me about Star Trek and be like, I don't want to hear it. Star Trek Discovery is friggin' awesome. Yeah, it is a great Star Trek show.
What would you rank number 1? Because then I know what kind of person you are then.
Yeah, number 1 for me is Next Generation.
Of course. What's number 2, though?
So this is the hard one, right? So this has changed in the last probably 10 years or so.
Okay.
My number 2 now for sure is Deep Space Nine.
Deep Space Nine. Okay. I would put that number 3 or 4.
So, but I am like, Discovery's great. It's very good.
So it's up there.
I could put it at 3. I could put it at 3.
Wow.
Yeah,
then
for
I have
sure.
to watch it. And then
it's awesome.
I have to let you know what I think then too. Yeah.
Speaking of space, actually,
Transition.
You follow? Yeah, segue. Do you follow? You don't follow space stuff as much as I do, right?
You always tell me about these things, but
cool.
Yes, go ahead and describe it.
Big deal, though. Like big deal. The crew. So SpaceX and Boeing are both making crew capsules for delivering astronauts to the ISS. We haven't North American astronauts go to Russia and get on Soyuz capsules to go to ISS. That's how it's been since.
An ISS for our audience, International Space Station.
There you go, just in case.
Yes.
So since 2011, the last space shuttle launch was 2011. So for quite some time now, the only way you've been able to get to space is through Russia, which obviously the United States of America probably isn't a big fan of, especially right now. And it's never been ideal for a lot of reasons. So SpaceX and Boeing are both designing capsules, and the capsule made by SpaceX is called Dragon. So there's an unmanned Dragon, which has been used for a couple of years now to deliver supplies. So the unmanned Dragon is good. It's been running for years. But the Crew Dragon just launched its first test this weekend. So they launched it on Saturday morning. It docked with the ISS this morning. And what's really cool, like, this is like, they science the hell out of this stuff, man. Like, to have to the idea, like, I don't know how much people get about space, but the idea that you have to launch at almost a specific exact time so that when the Dragon gets to ISS, they literally like come together.
Yes.
At the
There's
exact
a lot
right
of
time.
mathematical equations and physics involved in this.
So, but the way that they attach capsules to the ISS in the past has been by using the arm, the Canadarm, to grab it. So someone at the space station operates the arm, it reaches out and it grabs a hold of the capsule and drags it in basically the rest of the way and docks it.
Okay.
The Crew Dragon is the first capsule that will dock automatically. It doesn't need any intervention by people to dock it. It just does it with sensors and lasers and automation. It's awesome. Like the future is here, man. This is so cool. So like you're going to have very soon, and just announced a couple of days ago, there's going to be a joint venture between, I think, the United States and Canada to build a lunar space station.
Wow.
So there's going to be a space station orbiting orbiting the moon. It's going to be built by Canada and the United States, and maybe probably a couple other people. I just know that Canada's heavily involved. And this is the type of thing that's good. This is what this is going to be used for. The idea that you could have things land on the moon all the time, dock them with this space station that's orbiting the moon, and then launch it out towards the ISS and then launch it back to Earth or something like that. There's going to be, like, the structure is being put in place. We're going to be alive when people are living on the moon and Mars, and that always just absolutely blows my mind. I could talk about space all day, so I should stop.
The space segment.
Right. But it's so incredibly exciting.
It is awesome. Yes.
And this is such a huge achievement. So it looks like SpaceX is going to launch people in the Crew Dragon sometime in the early summer, so June or July. So that's when
that's crazy.
You'll hear me get geeked up about that.
You will get, yes.
I'm ready.
You're going to get jazzed up about that. Yes.
My body is ready. Let's do it. So, this is we've got a couple cool articles that we came across. One of them being this idea that companies now, in order to entice graduates to work for them, are offering to help pay down people's loans. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the first thing I think people realize that the number out there for total student debt carried by Americans is over 1.5, check this number, trillion dollars.
Just stupid.
So that number is very scary for our economic system, and just scary overall as each of us individuals goes into the work industry after you graduate from school and you're trying to get a job. So some of these companies, and I was thinking, man, this would be an awesome way to recruit again into education, is they help basically their workers to pay down their student loans. So let's say you had a $217 a month payment, that the company would pick that up. Imagine that. Then it's just cash in your pocket that then you can go and spend out in the economy to help drive that, to help pay for, your car payment or whatever it actually might be that you're working on, your bills, your other bills. So I think it's a fantastic idea. They give an example as far as some different students who recently graduated. They work for different companies and they get help to be able to pay down their student loans. I think that this is going to become the norm. There's just so much debt out there that this is a great recruitment tool. So many of us out there that have inordinate amounts of student loan. We need jobs, but not only do we need a good paying job, we need help with that too. If you have that availability, man, what an awesome way to recruit your workers.
You got to think like the tech companies would be all over this, the Facebooks and the Googles and the Apples. Because, the competition to get those people on board is high, and also probably the expense to get the education that qualifies you to work at Facebook or Google or Apple is expensive. So it's the perfect tool for those folks to use to say, listen, we'll help you wipe out your debt. $1.5 trillion. Think about the things you could do when
with
you
1.5
inject
trillion?
if you were no, but like in the sense that there's people
Yes.
Millions of people paying monthly payments to pay down student loans. Imagine what you and the other thousands of people, including myself, I still have student loan debt, what we would do with that extra money if we had it instead of having to pay down these ridiculous debts. We would be injecting that money into the economy in various ways by buying other things, it'd be disposable income. And that's, what we need. We need people with disposable income, and no one has it anymore. And that's a problem. Like the economy is strong when people have disposable income to go on vacations, to go to Niagara Falls and, do stupid things. I mean, that's
well, those aren't stupid, but yes, no, I know what you mean. Like that's the things that drive economies, and us being able to go ahead and put that money back out at there, man, something's going to have to happen. I mean, I don't know what it actually is.
I know what it is.
Will it actually break the economy? I hope not. I hope someone comes in and actually has a really strong plan that gets implemented, not kind of halfway implemented, which so many things happen like that. But a full all-out plan to attack this, and then really basically find a way to be able to go ahead and resolve this gigantic issue that's just hanging there. It's the elephant in the room in so many of our households.
There's an election coming up, folks, and a couple of good Democratic candidates have plans. So take a look at those folks, because
for sure
there's definitely
that's a way to do it.
I will try not to inject my opinion. Oh my God, it's going to be so hard the next year and a half.
Well, it's going to be all about the election. I mean, it's so related to everything that we do in education and in our own personal lives. You can't ignore it.
No.
So we will be talking about it, just not today.
And certainly this is an issue because it's coming up, I guess, again with Davos, and I guess she's trying to do some charter school stuff again. And an analysis just got released recently that says that the graduation odds for charter school high school students is quite a bit lower.
Yes, it's actually less than 50%.
Jeez.
That's disgusting. I mean, so basically they even put the analogy, you could flip a coin whether or not you're going to graduate from high school if you are part of a charter school. I also wanted to lay this one out for you, Mike. There's a map here with statistics. Now, some statistics, the states aren't giving those out, but one of the states that is giving out the information as far as charter schools with low graduation rates, there's a map that you can hover over the state of Minnesota, where I'm at. And the graduation rate for these charter schools, and this was in 2019, it's from the Research Center of Analysis, so it's not a tainted statistic. It is the actual amount is 35% in Minnesota.
So I saw another number here just a second ago.
Yeah, if you're sending your students. Yeah, go ahead.
Massachusetts, 9%. 9%. I mean, seriously. Texas, 1%. What the hell is going on in Texas?
No, but I mean, these are specific charter schools, and we don't know the number of those charter schools and what are they actually doing. But these statistics are staggering.
That's mind blowing.
This is crazy, and so there's a couple of things about this, and it's interesting as far as to really understand how diverse the expectations of our students are within different charter schools, even within the different states, because each school, as it says in their name, writes their own charter as far as what is their objectives. But in the end, it looks like they're not even serving our students. It's a big push by Betsy DeVos to say, not just charter schools, but just basically the privatization of schools in general, and because they will be better serving for all of our students. And these statistics show that that's actually not the case. It's far worse. And to have a 35% graduation rate in Minnesota and 1% in Texas as far as charter schools, the effectiveness of them, something's up with that. So we definitely need to go ahead and take a second look and not be influenced by the jargon out there that says, hey, charter schools give students choice. It does, but is their choice really a bad choice, as far as, the statistics show? And in this case, it does. So we'll make sure we link it so you guys can check it out. You can do your own in-depth analysis. And then if you have any other more information about charter schools in general and why they are obviously not meeting the needs of our students, we're not graduating our kids, let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. Hit us up. So we started a conversation online, and we're going to continue when we come back about whether we should give students zeros or not. Stay tuned.
Quests. One of Classcraft's most popular features, with over 100,000 lessons created by teachers and 3 million learning objectives completed by students so far, is now part of Classcraft's free offerings. In 2019, your students won't just be learning multiplication, chemistry, or any other content. They'll be saving the kingdom. Transform your lessons into adventures with Quests today. Visit classcraft.com for more information.
All right, welcome back, everybody. So, pretty interesting news story got kind of filtered through our feeds this week, and it generated a pretty interesting discussion on Glen's Facebook page. So we thought we would continue it here. The story is a Florida teacher has been fired for giving her students zeros for missing assignments. She was a teacher for quite some time, taught 8th grade history in Florida, and gave them a number of weeks to finish a project. They didn't hand it in. She gave them zeros. It was contrary to the school policy. So the school policy was a no zero policy. The lowest possible grade teachers can give the students at that school was 50%, even if they didn't turn anything in. Obviously, she disagreed with the rule and was fired for disobeying it. I mean, this is a complex story. There's a lot of...
So many layers.
There's a lot of issues. Obviously, there's the idea that she went against a school policy, regardless of whether it was right or wrong. There's that. There's whether we should be giving zeros at all. And certainly there is the idea that the grading system of offering a numerical grade to describe a student's learning is kind of where we ended up. So where do we want to start? First off, I mean, should this woman have been fired, Glen?
Should she have been fired? Well, if you break school policy, you can be fired. So
yes.
All of us sign contracts. So, and unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, it is the nature of the beast. We sign these contracts. And by signing it, you are saying that you're going to abide by the policies of the district. Many policies of many districts don't make any sense.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Actually are contrary and detrimental to education. I think some of them are.
100%.
This one, in this case, I don't know if it's detrimental to education. It was more of I'm going to stand up for what I believe is right. That's what she's saying, that it's ridiculous that she would be forced to give a 50% on a project assignment, whatever it might be, to students that didn't actually do it, So should she have been fired? Well, according to her contract, yes. Is it a good enough reason to fire someone as far as not following that specific policy? I'm not sure of that. And would she have been willing to go ahead and change it? That's the interesting part, is would they have brought her into the office and said, hey, we understand where you stand at, but our school policy is this, so we need you to go ahead and change that grade. And then at that point, did she say, no, I'm not going to do it, which then you're just you're intentionally not following, the contract. And then you're also going ahead and telling your superiors that, no, you're not going to follow what they're telling you to go ahead and do,
right,
which will get you fired. Now, is she a happier person? Probably, because she actually did that. She stood up for her own, what her beliefs were. Probably. Yeah. And, like some people said, so they think go work at a different school district, et cetera, or go work in, a different state. I'm not sure. It doesn't sound like it's a state policy. It was a local school district policy. And then the fights actually began, as far as whether or not we should give kids 50% or any amount of points for not turning something in. right?
So let's talk. Let's talk about.
That's where the controversy starts.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because that's definitely the second part of this. Let's leave out like the existential questions about grading itself for a second. Okay. So let's just talk about, let's say there's a grading system or there is a report card. You have to fill it out. It has to have a number on it.
Yes.
This is the way it is. So let's just deal with it
as it is.
Let's deal with this question as it is.
Okay.
So the way that I did things, and this was a really great discussion because I was able to kind of articulate it a little bit better later on. There were people that were, that are strongly no zeros ever under any circumstance. And I think that that's not an appropriate response at all. I guess my position is, and I'll give you kind of the workflow that I would go through. If a student was 2 weeks late on an assignment, I mean, at that point, they will have been given number of verbal warnings and reminders. And because we use Schoology, it's also literally right on the top of their login, on their main page that something is overdue.
Yep.
So obviously both students and parents know it's late. Okay.
Yep.
So I would tend to put a 0 in the grade book. I usually give about 2 weeks. So I put a 0 in the grade book. At that point, they've also then been notified they've gotten a 0, and that has tended to have gotten most of the ones who were late off their butts to get whatever it is they got to hand it in. They go, oh crap, I got a 0, I got to hand this in. They hand it in, I mark it, and we're good to go, right? I don't have a problem grading things that are late. So then you begin a game of cat and mouse a little bit, in the sense that, I go through it. I would have gone through a number of other steps. I would have called home for sure and spoken to parents. This is a big assignment. It's late. We need to get it in. There's a 0 in their grade book, and I would say, listen, the 0 is staying until you hand it in. That does, if you don't hand in something, you don't get a mark. It's really that simple. I can't give you credit for something you don't do. And I think it sends a really terrible message to give a student 50% when they don't have to do anything at all to do that. When you can pass and not do anything, I think that's awful. Yeah.
I get that point, and that's actually probably where the majority of our teachers stand. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I bet it's a controversial topic, no matter what. The opposite viewpoint, which is mine, is that the scale shouldn't start at 0. It should actually start at 50, and there's a mathematical reason for that. And basically, what they've done is they calculate a 0 into anything, especially something as big as, let's say, a project. And let's just call it an assessment, a summative assessment of knowledge, which would be something significant where it would actually cripple a student's grade. We all know, actually, anybody that marks 0s understands that there are times when you have marked a kid, let's say they got 3.
Their mark is what you're saying.
You've got 3 or 4 zeros within a grading period. And they've probably got, let's just say they have a total of 15 total things that you've actually assessed. So they're actually in the grade book. If 3 of those are 0s and any of those are significant amounts of points, let's just call them as far as points, what it does is it basically distorts the grade significantly. And you have students that have, for example, grades like a 38%, a 42%. I've even had students that had 11%. And the reason why they had an 11% is because I gave them 0s for assignments or items that were assessed that actually I graded it, marked it, as you say. And then I put 0s into the grade book, and it distorted their grade significantly.
Right.
So where should that scale start? And then my next question was basically the philosophical then point is, we're assessing these students with using a percentage scale, 0 through 100. And then we also probably use letter grades. Not all of us do, but many of us do. Letter grades that are associated with that. Many of our high schools use a 4.0 scale that determines a grade point average, GPA, et cetera, whatever it might be. The bigger questions then are, and I want to give a shout out to Jennifer Gonzalez of the Cult of Pedagogy podcast and her website, where she basically says, what are we actually measuring? Like, what do these things actually represent? And so I wanted to know, and it's hard. I mean, it's one of the most controversial questions you can ask a teacher is, what's the difference between a 95% student and an 85% student, or a 95% student and a student that gets a 72%, et cetera, whatever it might be. Right. And when you tell me that the difference, I want you to tell me how much more do they, it has to do with knowledge or skills that they develop, that they've proven, they demonstrated, or whatever it might be. And can those percentage scales actually do that? And how effective is it, to demonstrate those things? It's one of those old things that you talked about, tradition. It's a tradition that's ingrained so heavily into our educational system that when we talk about things like standards-based grading or other alternative ways to assess our students, it gets crazy out there, not only with our teachers and students, but it gets crazy with our communities, because we're all so used to that. It's easy for us to go like, hey, my student got an A, they're doing well in class.
Right.
Like they're doing the best that they could possibly do. They have a C. Well, what would people say that's like, oh, they're an average student, whatever it might be, like, how do you describe these people? D, they're a little bit they're below average. They're, but they're still passing the class. And then an F student is failing or whatever it might be. But it doesn't really talk about how much do we actually know as far as within our class, how much did we learn? What standards did we actually meet? That those percentages and those letters don't really represent any of those things. So it's really hard. It's a tough discussion to have, but it's one that we should definitely open it up, because even though it's one of those things I always tell people, when you talk about grading, it's like a Pandora's box. Yeah. And what we and you had discussed is like, there's so many different layers to it that you can go in so many different directions that usually people just get frustrated and give up and then go back to what they've always done.
Right.
But it's something that we should definitely be talking about and find good best practices to be able to go ahead and implement, because this is an old system, and we've basically said, it doesn't really do what it's meant to do, which is basically show us how much knowledge does a student actually have.
And I mean, this filters up, right, in the sense that the universities are looking for numbers for acceptance. So a lot of a common response to the grade, the number scale issue is switching to some sort of a mastery scale, an acquired, developing, and put that on a report card.
Yes.
So where it's a sentence or a word that suggests what knowledge, where they are in the process of acquiring a certain amount of knowledge. But I mean, a university is not going to accept that, for admissions.
But some are, though. Some are moving.
They?
Yeah, especially like you look into it. I should have pulled this up. But we're talking about let's just go to the extreme ends. Like, what are the top universities in the United States? Stanford, Harvard, those types of universities. They're moving away from GPAs because they know, they're the elite universities in the world. They understand that GPAs are so distorted depending upon which school you actually attended, that they don't really do a good representation of like, what does a student actually know? Same thing though, too, with standardized tests like ACT and SAT. That has become less and less important. And what's more important is things like their entry essay, their face-to-face interview. Those other things are important as far as just getting in the door, kind of like a job application, where you fill out the job application or your resume. Right. It looks really, okay, this is a qualified applicant, Now let's bring them into the room and actually talk to them, maybe make them deliver a lesson, et cetera, as far as with the teaching profession. Same thing with our students. It takes longer to do that, but man, you actually then have a really good idea about what kind of quality of student you're getting as far as being able to enter at the university. But I think more and more universities are going to move away from that, which thank goodness, because then it allows us to take a step back away and go, they're not requiring this. Instead, what they're requiring is these things which really prove that they are that quality of a student that they can be considered to be a student at our university.
Well, university admissions is complicated in and of itself. And I mean, university admissions shouldn't be based on past performance. It should be based on future potential. That's what you want to know. You want to know, especially for people who don't have the money to go to Harvard, for example, but should go to Harvard and would thrive in an environment like that. If given the opportunity. But, you know, they go to an inner city high school and life is tough. Life is crappy, but, you know, we see that this kid has a ton of potential. And so moving towards a mastery system and an entrance system that is able to judge a student based on their future gives that student who would be able to be given grants or awards or student aid so that they can get into Harvard. It gives them that opportunity, and then they excel and they thrive. You know, the two of us aren't going to solve the grading scale.
No way.
Problem. We're just, two dudes talking into microphones a little bit. But, this is a complicated question. I think, of course, it's unfortunate that this woman was fired. I think that, based on the circumstance and the rules, she probably, they had a right to fire her. It's unfortunate that, it didn't instead open up to an opportunity to have a much larger discussion and say, okay, we get what's going on here. Don't do it again. And let's promise to have a talk about this at a board level and see if we can, have an open discussion for a solution. Because obviously we don't have consensus here. As far as grading scales go, I mean, I think that a lot of people agree that a mastery scale is better in a lot of ways. So hopefully we'll get schools switching to that. But this is a complicated subject and
very complex.
I get the people who say under no circumstances should a student get a 0. I think that again, it's complicated. You could just go round and round.
Yes.
And I don't think we have the time for that because we have to talk to Lisa Johnson.
She's awesome.
So when we come back, we're going to be joined on the podcast by Lisa, who just wrote a book that's amazing called Creatively Productive. So stay tuned. All right, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We are thrilled to be joined by Lisa Johnson. Lisa is an educational technologist in Texas and the author of Creatively Productive, Essential Skills for Tackling Time Wasters, Clearing the Clutter, and Succeeding in School and Life, which sounds awesome, to be honest. Welcome to the podcast, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let's start right at the start. What does it mean to be creatively productive?
I am so glad you asked. I was thinking about this and I was thinking, like everybody has 24 hours in the day. Everybody has 168 hours in the week. And when I was really kind of looking at my new sort of newsletter and rebranding it and recreating the new format, I was thinking about that very thing is like, if I wanted to encapsulate like what is creatively productive, like what does that actually mean? And so I really got to thinking about, I really feel like it's a mindset, it's a lifestyle, it's kind of a movement. And sometimes we're creative, sometimes we're productive, sometimes we kind of find that sweet spot and we achieve what kind of the book entails of that creatively productive. But I think the bigger picture is that we're happy, healthy, and achieving the heights we want to achieve, both personally as well as professionally.
So
Love that.
probably my favorite thing about the book, I mean, Glenn will go on all day about free resources and like just giving things to teachers and giving them like all of the things that they need. And we love, so like books that have resources, and you have tons of them jammed into this. There's a lot here for people to take and to apply and to use in their lives kind of right away if they're reading this. If there was one resource in the book that you would encourage people to start doing, if they needed to say, listen, I need to get my act together, I need to be more productive, I need to be creatively productive, let's do it, what would that resource be? Where would people start if they were using your book as a resource?
Absolutely. Well, first I wanted to thank you, because I did, that was my really intent, was just to make sure that it was as thorough as it possibly could, because even when I'm conducting sessions, I kind of feel like more is more, within reason, obviously. And when you're talking about topics like digital organization and time management and note-taking and goal setting and reflection, there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach, to any of those things. It's a lot of trial and error. So that's really why I wanted to add a lot of different resources for each of those sections. And as you asked, kind of looking at like, where would I start? I would always start with goal setting. And really not even the goal setting part. In chapter 4, I get into kind of a values audit and looking at what your values are, because a lot of times people will set goals and they're not really in line with kind of who they are as a person and what their kind of core sort of, beliefs are. And so I think a lot of times that's why people don't, kind of finish those goals or meet their goals. The new book I'm reading by Cal Newport, Digital Minimalism, actually starts with looking at your values and setting goals for your device uses based on those values. So I think kind of looking at your values and then setting goals and kind of having everything weave through that is where I would always start.
It's funny, Glenn and I talk about this a lot too. There are a lot of things that you learn in teachers college. I don't know. Do you guys call it teachers college down there, by the way?
We do not.
Okay, I didn't think so. So this is we would also call it your professional year, but whatever, your Bachelor of Education.
Sure.
There's also definitely a lot of things you don't learn, and there's a laundry list of those. So we don't need to get into them. But one of the things related to what you're talking about is I don't think you learn a lot about how stretched thin you're going to be and how to manage that, how to handle all of the things that a teacher needs to do with their day is something you don't learn in school. And they also don't warn you that the more you try to innovate, the more you try to differentiate and do all of this cool stuff that Glenn and I are always trying to get people to do, that actually stretches you even thinner. It's hard. Teaching is hard. How important is it for educators to learn how to be master time managers?
I think it's very important, for absolutely. And I resonate with that. I think teachers burn out, because they are trying to do too much or trying to kind of add in too many new things all at once. Like I'm absolutely for innovation and kind of, changing things and making things, work more efficiently or more effectively and things like that. But you do have to be mindful of, the 24 hours you have in a day. So I think part of it's a balance of just kind of knowing yourself and kind of how you work and even within the day and know, how quickly you'll get stressed out, things like that, knowing what works for you, knowing kind of where you want to go, where you want to take your students, and kind of the best paths to get there and knowing how to handle the distractions and the detours along the way. And it's not an easy thing by any means. A lot of it's just kind of, it's self-awareness, a lot of it, and self-management, obviously.
And not to mention trying to balance your family life and your personal life and your social life and recreation time. I mean, because you need those things as a teacher as well, right?
Yeah, and I've been kind of in the education field for over 17 years, and it's as my own kids get older and things like that, and there's just different demands on your life, and so it really is. I talk about it in the book too, of kind of like these. Look at the things that are going to work for whatever seasons of life that you're in, because what works now may not work, 6 months, 2 years from now, because things come up. You may have somebody who's sick in the family. You may have, something that's happened. Your husband may be looking for another job, or, you might have something that comes up. And so you just have to be aware of those things and not, not beat yourself up over it.
So Lisa, in the book, it's not all just about teachers. It's actually emphasizes some things about students in it. One of the things that I noticed in there is you're emphasizing the importance of why our students should be taking good notes and why note taking is an essential skill. Sorry. Can you tell our listeners more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I start that chapter with a quote from a Harvard physics professor, Eric, I believe, Mazur. And it's an excerpt from a book by Alexis Wiggins. And what happened is the quote itself is, like you mentioned, we don't need necessarily good note takers, but it's part of a larger quote that talks about we need students who can hold up ideas to the light and challenge and question, test, and hypothesize about them. And I think that's the bigger thing. So sometimes when we talk about note taking, I think it gets kind of boiled down to basic regurgitation of what the teacher said. And I don't think that's really good note taking. I think good note taking is, like processing things and analyzing things and organizing them and synthesizing them and challenging that information. So note taking is one medium that if we do well, it allows us to do all of those things. And I'll just speak from my own personal experience, but I feel like there's very few settings in my life that I don't take notes in some form or fashion. Notes in meeting, I'll take notes when I'm reading, I'll take notes, when I'm in a professional development or meeting with a teacher, and they're all different styles of notes, and very few of them are just regurgitating what somebody's saying. So I think that's more where I don't want to just say, oh, we don't need good note takers. We do, but to really look at what note taking is.
I love the folks that do sketch notes. I think that is a skill that I don't have, that I would love to have. And I when I see them doing it, I'm like, wow, you're blowing my mind right now with how cool that is. I think sketchnoting and the people who are drawing and designing things on an iPad while they're sitting and listening to that stuff just blows my mind. And I don't know I guess there's value to it. Like, everyone's different, right? And I guess that's just a way that they find they retain things better. Is that kind of the nature of that?
I mean, I would agree. I think everybody, there's analog notes, there's digital notes, there's different processes of notes. You've got Cornell, you've got outline, you've got sketchnoting, you've got like the flow method, you've got all of these different, mind mapping and things like that. And so I think it's less about, it's more about figuring out what works best for each individual person and how they process information. And then also, obviously certain things like maybe a TED Talk or reading a book may lend themselves to one type of notes over another. But I think it's just finding what works for you, because really those notes are intended to be something that you're going to reflect back on and use as a resource. So if it makes sense to you and it's how your brain works, I don't think it matters which style you're using per se.
So one of the things we know about our listeners, I think in particular, generally speaking, is that they're pretty productive people. We have a lot of high achievers in our listenership in terms of what they're doing in education. So what do you think creatively productive brings to those people, the people who say, I think I got it all pretty well handled right now. I'm doing okay with this. Do you think you can bring to them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I would consider myself a fairly productive person, but at the same time, I never stop learning, and there's always different things that, I find to be helpful and how to handle, the procrastination and the distractions and things of that nature. Obviously perfection is the enemy of done. So I'm certainly not advocating that, you have to tweak everything that is already working for you. But I also think it's kind of like spring cleaning. Every year we accumulate certain things that, may not work as well. And we kind of have to go back and, tweak things here and there. As I've been reading and kind of purge and regroup as well. I've been reading Cal Newport's book, Digital Minimalism, and he had 1,500 people who were very productive type people, but they signed up for a month digital declutter, and the vast majority of them, still had places that they could kind of trim the fat and be more mindful about their technology use and things like that. I think the other piece to this book is everything I include is really intended to be used with students as well, although obviously all of it could be used, personally and professionally. And I think that's where I don't know that we talk enough with students about these sort of things, because they are somewhat soft skills and, digital organization and, time management and things like that. And I think just having those conversations with them, talking to them about what works for us, what may not work, and just being more open about those topics, I think is really going to be more beneficial for our students. And so that's really where I get from it. I mean, if you are productive, hopefully you're talking to your students about what strategies you're using or where you found those strategies and things like that. I think that's really important strategy to build our students' self-management skills.
So one of the most awesome parts of the book discusses why it's so important to read books that are outside of the quote unquote edusphere. So I was going to ask, what books have you recently read or are you reading right now that you would recommend to our audience?
Sure. And I'll just kind of add a little caveat there. Ultimately, I think it's important just to not silo ourselves in one sort of, genre ever, and so I think
Great point.
Reading outside, like I read YA, I read, fiction, I read nonfiction, I'll read some books by educators, I'll read some that, aren't by educators. So I keep mentioning Cal Newport's book. It's really, really good. He's the author of the book Deep Work. And so this is I don't think it's his second book. I think he's written more, but it's really, really, really good. And it's tackling a lot of the issues that I think, I know I personally face with kind of the way that social media has become so prevalent in our lives. And so I really appreciate his thoughtful sort of takes on those things. A lot of books by Ryan Holiday are really good. He's written The Perennial Seller, and those are definitely not written for educators, but I mean, not that you couldn't read them, but there are some really interesting things, because the idea is, why does certain content last for generations and other content not? And so I think that's kind of the bigger takeaway from it is what makes things, perennial and what makes things kind of fleeting and a trend. And then the last one I'll just mention is pretty much anything by Austin Kleon. He's absolutely fantastic. He lives here in Austin, Texas, and he's the one who does a lot of the New York Times blackout poetry, but he's written 3 books and a journal. His 3rd book actually comes out, I think, next month. It's called Keep Going, 10 Ways to Stay Creative in Good Times and Bad. And every time I read one of his books, I get a lot out of it. So I really appreciate kind of the way that he structures information, and there's just so much you can kind of glean from it.
Lisa, thanks so much for joining us. How can people connect with you? Where can they reach out with you on the internet, on your website? Like, give us your contact information.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to www.tech, chef, CHEF, and then number 4 letter U.com, you'll get my blog, resources. There's a link to both of the books that I've written, as well as blog posts about those. You can actually download the first chapter and the introduction of Creatively Productive and kind of glean all of those information. On Pinterest and Twitter and Facebook, I'm Tech Chef for You as well. On Instagram, I'm Note Chef for You. It's in Note and then CHEF and then number 4 letter U. And that's really because I share my reader's notebook there. I share, books that I'm reading. I share things of that nature, planners and bullet journaling. And so I didn't want to share that on all of the other channels, because I feel like it's a little bit of a very different sort of thing that I'm doing. And so I didn't want to clutter those with that. So people who really just want to interested in those, they can follow the Instagram account.
Nice. And we're going to have a link to buy the book in the show notes, folks, if you're looking to pick up Creatively Productive. Thanks for joining us, Lisa. This has been awesome.
Thank you, Glenn and Mike, both of you. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed kind of listening to your podcast, and I was thrilled and honored to be able to be a guest.
Thanks for listening to OnEducation. My name is Mike Washburn. My co-host is Glen Irvin. Want to get in touch with us? Check out our website at oneducationpodcast.com. You can tweet us at oneducationpod. Glen is at Irv Spanish on Twitter. I can be found on Twitter at Mr. Washburn. You can find us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/OnEducationPod. If you're enjoying the show and think others would too, we'd love if you shared it with them. Please leave us a rating or review in the Apple Podcast or Google Play Store. When you leave a rating, it gives our rankings a boost, and this helps others discover the show. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Schoology, for supporting us. Check out Schoology.com to learn how they can help you advance what's possible. Thanks as always for listening. Stay awesome, and we'll see you soon.